So, welcome to another episode of the Jobs for Women podcast, How They Did It. I am very excited and delighted to welcome this week's guest. We have Olivia Preston-Lee, who is the Events and Partnership Manager at Talk Twenties. Welcome to the podcast, Olivia.
Thank you, Zoe, for having me.
It's so great. We've already had lots of chats off the pod, haven't we? And meetings. So I was really keen to get you on because you are such a great example of someone who is just, to me, smashing LinkedIn, doing the networking, and a great story of getting into work. So I was keen to get you on. So talk to us. What do you do? Events and Partnership Manager. Talk to me.
So I am the Events and Partnerships Manager at Talk Twenties. So Talk Twenties is a media and events company, and we're all about helping you to figure your shit out, basically. So when you leave education, it's like, what next? There's kind of no clear route. If you leave and you haven't got a job lined up, it's a bit like, where do I go? And even if you have got a job lined up, no one tells you how to get a house, get a mortgage. So we cover all of those types of things via a podcast, our socials, and a live event. So my role comes in to get the partners involved, to support us and to sponsor us for the podcast and the live event. And then also when we put on the live event, 20s Fest, it's my job to manage the whole of that as well.
That sounds like the most amazing job ever. So how did you get into this specific career, and what did you do at uni?
So I studied, to be honest, maybe I should start at college. So at college, I did business studies, philosophy, and theatre studies. So I'm not entirely sure if at college I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I liked like the philosophical, like thinking about things. I liked business studies and I liked drama. Now, I'm not sure if they naturally all fit into events management, but I was like looking at different careers. I knew I didn't want to be in a career that was 100% sat behind a desk or didn't have the opportunity to network and meet people. And I wanted to be able to put my own like creative ideas and influence into something. So when I was looking, events management was the thing that was coming up, and I knew I wanted to go to uni as well. So events management was the course that I did at uni. I did that for 4 years and I took a 1-year placement year. So I got some work experience over that time. I started a mobile bar. So I used to go around to different events as the bar and the coffee service. And then I completed my final year. And then how I got into this job is really like the power of networking, to be honest with you. So it was actually January 2023, so not that long ago. And Talk Twenties were putting on like a goal setting workshop. So I was like, new year, new me, let's join it. I hadn't heard of the company before, but I was joining lots of different things. So I joined the workshop and I was like, this is really cool. I like what they did. They actually put on like an accountability partner meetup session. And ironically, I'd never heard of that other than the week before. So I was like, that's really interesting. And like, it intrigued me that they were sort of encouraging this concept of having an accountability partner. So I think Gabby also mentioned the fact that at that time, they didn't have a live event, but they were thinking about putting a live event on. So because I was in my final year of an events management degree, I messaged her on LinkedIn and I was like, really enjoyed that workshop. I'm just like, I'm studying events. If I can be involved in any way in any events you do, let me know. So that was that. And then I continued to just follow Talk Twenties on socials. And then about 3 months later, by pure coincidence, we didn't know each other. We didn't know we were going to be there. We were both at the same event, and it was actually quite a big event. And by chance, we were both in the toilets at the same time, and no one else was in the toilets. So I was like, right, this is my opportunity. So I went over, I got Gabby in a corner, and I was like, give me a job. No, but I spoke to her and I was like, I introduced myself. I'd said that I'd joined the workshop, that I'd been following what Talk Twenties do, and I liked kind of the concepts and the ethos, and just to reintroduce myself, like if there's anything coming up, like I'd love to be part of it. And then she was like, well, actually, there is something coming up. So this is where 20s Fest like really was cemented into what could be in the future. So then I started volunteering. I think I volunteered for about 5 months prior to officially starting. So it wasn't really heavy stuff, but it was just like we were in like a WhatsApp group and like when we actually started to get into it more, like I was going to site visits and that sort of thing. But basically, because I'd volunteered, obviously Gabby could see that I was a fit for the company. It's only a startup, so it's a small team. I was then offered the full-time role to be the events and partnerships manager after like being in the team on a volunteer basis, and that's where we're at now.
Oh wow! Do you know what? That is testament to your hard work, but also I am such a massive believer in those follow-up messages. You know, like the fact that you attended the webinar and took that time to respond. So massive respect to you for doing that. And what was the degree like? And do you need a degree to work in this area?
No, like 100%, you do not need a degree to work in events. And I can't speak for everyone, but I would say for the majority of things, you probably don't need a degree. However, for my case, I think a degree was beneficial because sort of, I guess, where the area I'm from, like a lot of people kind of go to work, come home, and they have very like regular type of jobs where most people would have heard of those types of jobs. Now, I didn't know anyone who was an event manager. I hadn't heard of like anyone doing that sort of job or what that would really mean. So for me, it opened my eyes to a whole other type of world, which I'd never kind of experienced before. So for me, that was beneficial to see what the potential was. Also, it bought me 4 years I've always been very mature, but like to mature, to work on being able to speak to people who I don't know, to gain skills next to university while I had that extra time. Because obviously when you work full time, you have less available time. So the course in itself was valuable in allowing me to kind of round myself as a person. And like I'm actually doing a master's now, so I still think that educational element is relevant, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you had any like mentors along the way?
No, I actually am looking for a mentor now. It's something I'd like to dive into. I wouldn't say I've had like a specific mentor as such. However, I think going along kind of the journey, I would say like certain people. So for example, there's some people who were lecturers on my course who I found really inspirational. And not that they were mentoring me, but because I had regular contact and access to them and seeing kind of what they did in their like day jobs, like lecturing us, and then what they would do outside of that. In a sense, that was like mentorship, because it was like what I could do if I was to kind of do similar things to what they had done in the past. So that was kind of the only experience I've really had in terms of mentorship.
That's interesting that you're looking for someone, and I know what you mean about like seeing your lecturer. It's like sometimes we talk about role models a lot at Jobs for Women. It's like seeing what is possible. 100%. So if anyone's listening, Olivia's looking for a mentor. There you go, little plug. And talk us through a typical day for an events and partnership manager. What do people not see that they might presume, about the job?
So I actually think that's a really hard question, because I don't think there is a typical day. I think, first of all, I can only speak for myself, and maybe someone else in this role will do a completely different thing. But at Talk Twenties, there's 3 full-time members of staff. Gabby, the founder, myself, events and partnerships, and Georgia, creative producer. So that means, like, of course, that's my role, and that's the role that I play within the company. But because we're a startup, things move so fast. Like in the space of probably 2, maybe 3 weeks, we've got 2 new business concepts which we're now moving forward with that weren't a thing, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So like day to day is very much like lots of internal meetings and catch-ups, lots of strategy, lots of like, I would say groundwork in the sense of like, because I'm partnerships, like reaching out and communicating with lots of people who you won't see on like kind of the front of it, because lots of those things like don't come to fruition yet, or they come later down the line. So I think there's a lot of like background work which isn't shown. Obviously, when you see a nice shiny partner, that's kind of like, oh yeah, that's what we've been doing. But behind that, there's hundreds of other people who we've been building relationships with. And from the event side as well, it's a case of like constantly being on the lookout of what other types of events are doing and different venues. So I can't even say a typical day, because no day is the same. But I mean, that's what I wanted, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it sounds fun and exciting. And is there anything that that you would have done differently? Obviously, you're really early on in your career. You've done your degree, you're now doing your master's, which I can't wait. I want to ask about as well. Is there anything that you'd have done differently?
No, to be honest, I feel like everything's been, for me, like so far, everything's worked out in the sense that, like throughout uni, I put myself in as many positions to meet new people, interact and get experiences where I could. Like, for example, I feel like part of the reason why I'm in the role that I'm in now is I had a little bit of experience sort of shadowing and getting to know someone in a different partnerships role in a different company on a volunteer basis before being involved in Talk Twenties. So because I put myself in positions where I was exposed to things outside of my course, I've now been able to get into something that I wanted to be in. So I wouldn't say to do anything differently, really. I'm happy with how things have gone.
That's brilliant. Do you think volunteering is necessary to get into this industry?
I think yes. I think volunteering is necessary, but I don't think that, now maybe this is just in my head, but I think at university, or at least on my course, or perhaps in general, there's this kind of idea that volunteering is like you go in, I don't know, steward on a street corner for a company, and like that's good volunteering. I think there's benefits to that, but I don't think all volunteering is good volunteering, because of course, like you can get some work experience to put on your CV, and if that's what your aim is, like fine. But if you're volunteering to try and like get to a particular place, like working for a company as a steward on a corner is not going to give you the skills and exposure you need to get into that particular role, if it is a particular role you're aiming to get into. So to be honest, like I didn't know that events and partnerships role on Talk Twenties was going to happen, but I knew that I wanted to not be involved in like kind of ground level stuff. I wanted to be involved in like the strategic and the creative side. So that's why I tried to volunteer like very proactively, but in a considered way. Like I tried to do things that I thought were going to look a little bit different to maybe what other people were doing, or to just be bold and put myself out there to get in positions that weren't being offered as volunteer positions, but just to say like I would like to gain experience in this area and therefore can I volunteer. So I think volunteering is necessary to an extent to show that you're willing to get involved, but I don't think any and all types of volunteering is necessarily beneficial.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. And I think you have been bold and you've proved that it works, but you've put the hard work in as well, haven't you? So massive respect to you. And is there anything that so has anyone given you like a piece of advice that you have maybe ignored, like about going to uni or going into it? Like, you know, some people that we've spoken to at Jobs for Women, we did a webinar and someone said, I think she worked in tech or engineering, and her parents were like, don't do that at uni. Have you ever had any advice that you've just totally ignored?
I think maybe the first two things that spring to mind is my family always wanted me to be a solicitor because he said I like arguing. But I think, like, I mean, I feel like you don't have to have one career in your life anyway. So, like, I don't feel like, I mean, I've ignored it in the sense that that's not what I'm doing. But I feel like that's also not a possibility if I wanted to do it. But I also think, like, a lot of people are like, why are you going to university and getting an events management degree to plan a party? Like, I think people don't understand, like, in particular, the events management side, that there's a whole industry, and it's not just planning a child's birthday party. Like, everything that's involved in your life, there's probably an event linked to it. So I think maybe ignoring the fact that people were kind of like, what's the point in that? Because actually there was a lot of point in it for me. It was like the broader experience that I got.
Yeah, brilliant answer. And also, it's no one's business, is it? It's so annoying when people chime in on what you're doing. And what sort of future do you think is in store for this sort of, well, I guess the industry? Like, where is it going? You know, like, obviously we've, like, when you think about events in the past, like, obviously everything's online. Is there anything that you can see, like, trends for this industry?
I actually think there's probably going to be a shift from like major types of events to more intimate events, and I think that's a few things. I think, like, technology advancing means that there's the ability to have more regular intimate events as opposed to like large scale events. And I've never said this before, and I don't know if this is necessarily true, but when you asked me, I also wonder whether, like, as threat levels increase with like society and putting on event like large scale events, whether part of the reason to move to intimate events is to reduce that security threat, because that's a huge thing in events. Like, I think that people don't necessarily consider when you think about it, because it's all about like, what's the content, how is the planning, what does it look like, but a massive part of it is like your actual logisticals of like keeping people safe. And like, even if it's a case of like literally moving them from A to B, or whether it's like someone posing a threat, I think perhaps there might be a shift to more intimate events to try and minimize that threat.
That's so interesting. And as someone that doesn't work in that area, I can see that must be such a huge piece of work, you know, like moving someone from A to B and then that threat. That's really interesting. That's a whole other topic. Yeah, great answer. And what's the best piece of career advice that you've ever received? It could be at uni, that you would like to pass on, not piss on. You would like to pass on to someone else?
I don't know if this is specific advice, but I think the thing that I take away in what I've said previously is to be bold. I think, like, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think it's the best thing to take away. Like, you've just got to think, do you know what? Like, what have I got to lose? Like, I may as well put myself out there. They'll either ignore me, they'll give me feedback and tell me why they're not willing to help if that's the case, or they'll be like, yeah, of course. So I feel like it's the best situation, especially at the start of your career, where like, I feel like you kind of have a power as a young person or someone in a new career, even if you're not a young person, to be like, I don't really know much about this, so therefore like I'm looking for support and help. And that's like your power to be able to like reach out to people and to try and, you know, connect and ask for things. Whereas if you was a bit further down the line, it might be like, you can't really ask or reach out in the same way as you can when you're first starting into something, because people, I think, are perhaps a little bit more willing to be like helping hand type mentality.
Yeah, brilliant advice. And I think people are open to it. I've listened to podcasts where people have said, like, I love it when people message me and actually ask for advice or opportunities. So I think that's brilliant advice. And then my final question is, what kind of impact do you want to leave in this industry?
Oh, wow. I think on a very personal level, I would like to be known as someone who is open to like hearing people out and having conversations and never shutting people down. Because I actually remember, and I guess I'll probably never forget it now, like the fact I'm bringing it up, like very early on, I was doing some work for a football company. There was a football match on and I was stewarding or something, and I hadn't been in this venue before, and I asked someone who was the event manager in the venue where the disabled toilets were, because I was looking after the disabled football stand. So I asked them and she just kind of shrugged me off as if like, why would you be asking me that? But like, I think I would never want to kind of leave that kind of someone thinking like, why was they just speaking to me like that? So I hope like to come across as someone who's always like willing to help out and to listen and to just be very like normal, like, if that makes sense. Because I feel like obviously right now I am at the start of my career, but I hope to get to a position where like I can say, wow, look how far I've come and what the positions I'm in now. But I hope to like maintain that like normalness of just being able to communicate with people like the people.
Oh, I love that. And I'm right with you. It's like just being open and accessible and
Yeah.
to everyone. Love that. Brilliant way to end. If people want to reach out to you and connect with you, where can they find you?
So on LinkedIn, Olivia Preston-Lee, and on Instagram, it's oliviaprestonlee.events.
Awesome. And I will add the links into the show notes. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was brilliant.
Thanks for chatting. I've enjoyed it.